Chernobyl disaster, 1986. The Chernobyl disaster, which occurred on April 26, 1986, at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant, became one of the most tragic and large-scale nuclear accidents in human history. As a result of the explosion at reactor number 4, enormous quantities of radioactive substances were released, spreading not only across Ukraine but also throughout Europe. This led to the contamination of air, water, and soil with radiation, which had long-term impacts on human health and the environment. Approximately 350,000 people were evacuated from contaminated areas. Although the number of immediate casualties was relatively small, the long-term consequences, including an increase in cancer cases and other diseases, affected tens of thousands of people. The cleanup efforts continued for decades, and the exclusion zone around Chernobyl remains one of the most radioactive and dangerous places in the world. Special programs were developed for the examination and treatment of liquidators, but many of them face severe health issues and even deaths due to radiation exposure. An important aspect of the disaster is that it led to significant changes in international agreements on nuclear safety and control over nuclear energy. After Chernobyl, many countries reassessed their nuclear programs, and discussions began about greater transparency and accountability in the field of nuclear energy. Fukushima, 2011. On March 11, 2011, one of the most destructive natural disasters in Japan's history occurred, a magnitude 9.0 earthquake that led to a powerful tsunami. The wave flooded the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant, damaging the cooling systems of the reactors. This caused overheating and the melting of nuclear fuel in 3 of the 6 reactors, resulting in the release of radioactive materials into the atmosphere. Although the disaster did not lead to immediate mass casualties, more than 150,000 people were evacuated from nearby towns within a 20 kilometers radius of the plant. Radioactive contamination affected the region's ecology as well as the health of the population. Many of those evacuated from the contamination zone experienced psychological problems related to the loss of their homes and way of life. Fukushima also demonstrated the dangers associated with nuclear energy and led to a reassessment of nuclear energy policies in Japan and other countries. As a result of the incident, the Japanese government decided to shut down most of the operating nuclear power plants and begin their inspections. The global consequences of Fukushima also impacted international relations, as many countries began to review their nuclear programs and seek alternative energy sources. 3 Mile Island, 1979. The accident at the 3 Mile Island nuclear power plant in the United States, which occurred on March 28, 1979, became the first major incident at a nuclear power plant in the country's history. Due to a technical malfunction in the cooling system, a partial meltdown of the reactor occurred. Despite minimal radioactive contamination in the atmosphere, the accident caused mass panic among the local population. The incident marked a turning point in American nuclear energy and led to significant changes in safety policy at nuclear power plants. The uncertainty and fear caused by the accident led to a decline in public trust in nuclear energy in the U.S. Public discontent, and protests against the use of nuclear energy increased, leading to a slowdown in the construction of new nuclear plants and an increase in funding for alternative energy sources. In the following years, new rules and protocols were implemented to enhance safety at nuclear power plants. This incident served as an important reminder that even a small mistake can lead to significant consequences. Fukushima disaster, 1957. The Fukushima disaster, which occurred on September 29, 1957, at the Mayak facility in the USSR, remained classified for a long time and was one of the most terrifying nuclear catastrophes of its time. As a result of an explosion in a radioactive waste storage facility, a significant volume of radiation was released into the atmosphere, leading to contamination of vast territories in the Chelyabinsk region. Although information about the number of victims was long concealed, it is believed that over 200,000 people were exposed to radiation. This incident not only resulted in serious ecological consequences, but also became one of the reasons for increased control over nuclear energy and the establishment of international safety mechanisms. Following the Kyshtym disaster, work began to improve technologies for the storage and disposal of radioactive waste. Furthermore, this incident marked an important step towards increasing transparency in nuclear safety and accountability for the consequences of nuclear activities. Rameshwar, 1985. During the construction of the Rameshwar nuclear power plant in India, a serious incident occurred involving a leak of radioactive materials. The nature of the accident and the exact details of the incident remained largely unknown for a long time, but experts believe that a design flaw or a violation of safety protocols led to a dangerous release of radiation into the environment. This event triggered public unrest and protests against the use of nuclear energy in India. Although the disaster did not result in mass casualties, the incident significantly undermined trust in nuclear energy and raised concerns about the safety of many older nuclear plants in the country. As a result of this incident, steps were taken to improve safety standards and increase oversight of nuclear facilities in India. Chernobyl liquidators, 1986 to 1987. After the Chernobyl disaster, thousands of people known as liquidators were involved in cleanup and recovery efforts. These included firefighters, military personnel, engineers, and other specialists who worked under conditions of high radiation levels. Despite their heroism, the health consequences for many liquidators were catastrophic. The incidence of diseases, including cancer, and the number of deaths among these individuals significantly increased in the following years. These events served as an important reminder of the high risks associated with working in conditions of radiation contamination. The liquidators faced many difficulties, including a lack of information about radiation risks and inadequate medical assistance. Their sacrifices and suffering became a symbol of the value of human life and the necessity of protecting workers engaged in hazardous conditions. Nuclear tests at Bikini Atoll, 1946 to 1958. Between 1946 and 1958, the United States conducted a series of nuclear tests at Bikini Atoll in the Pacific Ocean. During these tests, both atomic and hydrogen bombs were detonated, leading to an ecological disaster. The islands and surrounding areas became contaminated with radiation, destroying the ecosystem and leading to the loss of many traditional ways of life for local residents. More than 1,600 people were evacuated from the atoll. However, the effects of radiation continued to impact their health and lives. Today, Bikini Atoll remains closed to habitation. This event also drew attention to the consequences of nuclear testing and sparked international calls for a ban on nuclear tests and stricter control over nuclear activities. The local residents who returned to their lands faced health issues and social justice problems, leading to long legal battles for compensation and recognition of their suffering. Fukushima nuclear power plant disaster, 2000. In 2000, an incident occurred at the Fukushima nuclear power plant in Japan involving a leak of radioactive materials. Although the radiation release was relatively minimal, this event raised public concerns and led to protests against the continued use of nuclear energy in Japan. This case served as an important signal to authorities about the need to strengthen oversight of the technical condition of nuclear facilities and to check the safety levels of older nuclear plants. Public dissatisfaction with nuclear energy increased, and many activists began advocating for a shift to alternative energy sources. This event also contributed to greater openness and transparency in the nuclear energy sector, as authorities began to inform the public more about the status of nuclear plants and potential risks. Daini Nuclear Power Plant Accident, 1982. At the Daini Nuclear Power Plant in Japan, a cooling system failure occurred in 1982, leading to a rise in reactor temperature and a risk of radiation leakage. This incident became one of the first major accidents at Japanese nuclear plants, after which a decision was made to reassess many safety aspects at such facilities. Although the incident did not lead to major consequences, it prompted Japan to pay even more attention to improving oversight of nuclear energy. The safety systems at nuclear power plants were modernized, and work began to enhance personnel training. This incident also served as a warning for other countries using nuclear energy and facilitated international cooperation in the field of nuclear safety. 3 Mile Island Repeat Accident, 1980s. After the main accident at 3 Mile Island in 1979, another incident occurred in the 1980s when a radiation leak was again detected at the plant. This case demonstrated that even after major accidents, safety systems could have weaknesses, and the process of cleanup and recovery could be lengthy and challenging. The repeated incidents became a key impetus for revising nuclear safety policies and tightening standards. Many nuclear plants in the U.S. began to undergo additional inspections and upgrades. There was increased attention to personnel training and public communications to enhance trust in nuclear energy. Radioactive contamination in New Zealand, 1960 to 1970 S. In the 1960s and 1970s, New Zealand faced the consequences of radioactive contamination caused by nuclear tests conducted by the UK and France in the Pacific Ocean. Radioactive fallout reached New Zealand, contaminating land, water, and air, impacting the ecology and health of the local population. This case became a catalyst for the growing anti-nuclear testing movement and for environmental safety. The public movement that emerged as a result of this contamination led to the adoption of new laws and initiatives to protect the environment. New Zealand became one of the first countries to declare a nuclear-free status, which was an important step in the fight for environmental safety and the protection of citizens' health. Louisa Nuclear Power Plant Accident, 2006. In 2006, an incident occurred at the Louisa Nuclear Power Plant in Hungary involving overheating of one of the reactors. This led to minor radiation leaks, which nonetheless sparked public protests. Although the consequences of the disaster were limited, the accident highlighted the importance of regular monitoring of the condition of older nuclear plants and the implementation of new measures to prevent such incidents. Public dissatisfaction led to a reassessment of safety policies at nuclear power plants in Hungary, and authorities began to more actively inform citizens about the status of nuclear facilities and potential risks. This also contributed to growing interest in renewable energy sources as an alternative to nuclear energy. Nuclear pollution in Sendai, 1965. The incident involving the leak of radioactive materials into a river in Sendai, Japan, in 1965 was one of the first major cases of radioactive contamination in the country. The leak contaminated water resources and had a lasting impact on local ecosystems. This incident underscored the importance of monitoring the quality and safety of nuclear installations and led to changes in Japan's nuclear policy. The Japanese government began working to improve safety standards and oversight of nuclear power plants, as well as to inform the public about potential risks. This case served as an important lesson about the need for constant monitoring and risk assessment in the field of nuclear energy.